You unlock this door with the key of compassion. Beyond it is another world, a world of science, a world of common sense, a world of sanity. You're moving into a land of both empathy and ethics, of nutritional knowledge and empowerment. You've just crossed over into Dr. Osborne's zone. Welcome to Dr. Osborne's Zone. Today we're tackling a topic probably near and dear to many people's hearts, and that's alcohol consumption. What's safe? What's not safe? What's gluten-free? What should you worry about? That's what we're going to tackle today. Now, I think it's important that before we get into the nuts and bolts, it's important to call alcohol what it is. Alcohol should not be used as a staple. I know that many doctors might recommend a glass of wine, or even in some cases several glasses of wine a night to be heart healthy. But alcohol is a poison, and I think it's important to start this out with just understanding the nature of how alcohol can poison humans. Especially those of you who are gluten sensitive, we know that alcohol causes B vitamin deficiencies, and particularly there's a linkage to vitamin B1, vitamin B3, and zinc deficiency, also contributing to villus atrophy, which is the same finding that is present in the GI tracts or the intestines of patients that are getting a diagnosis of celiac disease. So if you're new to the gluten-free diet, maybe you have a new celiac diagnosis, or maybe you are just embarking on it and you're trying to overcome chronic autoimmune illness, alcohol, in my opinion, is best left out until you can say firmly that your health is restored and recovered. So if that's not your case, watch and bookmark this video for later so that when you're ready to imbibe a little bit in the spirits or other alcoholic beverages that you have this information. But don't do it too prematurely, because I don't want to see anyone get hurt based on the information that we're going to go through tonight. Okay, let's start with beer and ale. Now, there's a lot of beers that claim to be gluten-free. Most of those are made from other grains like sorghum. And so they're not, even though technically, per the FDA definition of gluten, which is it needs to be free of wheat, barley, and rye, these beers have different kinds of gluten in them that I do not recommend. I see a lot of people attempt to use them and end up getting damaged as well. Now, there are also beer substitutes like ciders. And of course, ciders, depending on what fruit was used to make the cider, generally those are okay. They are gluten-free, but you have to read the label, because sometimes what happens with cider is they use malt as a sweetening agent, and malt being a derivative of barley, which is of course a no-no. So ciders, some of them can be, some of them are not, and that's where you have to read and stay on top of those labels and make sure, even if the label says gluten-free, you want to read it, because again, a lot of these products, even aside from the malt, contain other forms of sugar, predominantly corn sugar, especially when you get into some of the flavor mixes of different ciders. Corn sugar can be an ingredient and something that definitely is discouraged in people trying, again, to drink and maintain a gluten-free diet. And we also have wines and champagnes, which generally speaking, wines and champagnes are gluten-free, where we have a few caveats though. And one of those caveats can be in the actual barrel itself. Some winemakers use a wheat paste or grain-based paste to seal the oak barrel. So it's, in my opinion, you can get some cross-contamination in wine, so you just want to be aware of that. I would always, inquire as to whether or not that's the case with the wine that you're attempting to drink. Now, the other aspect of wine in champagne that you have to be really, really careful of is the high sugar content. Now, red wines generally are lower sugar, and white wines generally are higher in sugars. And so the lower the sugar content of the wine, probably if we're going to call it healthy, let's not lie to ourselves, the healthier or the lesser of poisons it's going to be, because the whiter the wine, this is a general rule, usually again the higher the sugar, and we also know that sugar's not good for you. So when you combine sugar plus alcohol, what you get is you get kind of a double hit. So again, for the occasional use, red wine, you probably want to pair on the side of red wine more than the high sugar white wines like Rieslings, etc. We also have brandies. This is a time of the year right now where a lot of folks are using brandy snifters and going to town on brandy. Now, brandy is generally gluten-free. It's a derivative of different fruits, and so Again, what you have to be careful with is the added flavors, the natural flavors and other things they can add that might be derivative of grains, particularly grains like wheat or corn. So, but otherwise, brandy is relatively safe. And then we have, beyond those, cognac. Cognac's another popular one. For those of you, especially who like a cigar now and again, cognacs and dipping cigars are, popular. Or a popular trend. And so cognac can be made from different types of spirits. I mean, the vast majority of cognacs, in my experience, are grape. And so in that regard, it's perfectly fine. But there are a lot of brands that are wheat-derived or corn-derived. I've even seen some that have been produced from corn. So you have to be careful with cognac. Make sure you look at the source of the distillation to confirm that it is absolutely grain-free. And then grappa, for those of you, grappa is made from pressed grapes, and it's safe. Mead, also mead, honey meads, where you have to be careful of with the mead is the added ingredients. So again, it's going back to the natural flavors and the other flavors. And this is where we've really seen in the alcohol industry a huge trend toward flavoring alcohols with synthetic or chemical flavoring agents. And so these are something else I would encourage any of you to just be aware of and be cautious about, because if you don't know the source of the ingredient, you might be getting some corn in a lot of those, and so just be careful. And then there's ouzo. Those of you who aren't familiar, it's a licorice-type drink made from fennel seed that is popular in Greek restaurants and popular in Greek cuisine, but perfectly fine and perfectly gluten-free. So if you enjoy a licorice-type beverage, alcohol beverage, ouzo's the one you want to go with. And then there's rum. Rum is, of course, made from sugarcane, and technically is definitely gluten-free. Where people get into trouble with rum, same thing, flavoring agents. They're making a lot of new flavoring agents in a lot of these rums. You also run into a problem if you're having a mixed drink. Say you're eating out at a bar or at a restaurant, and they're mixing in the different, especially, for example, like a daiquiri. Perfect example, like the base that they use in a strawberry daiquiri at many restaurants is corn sugar or corn syrup with some strawberry puree. And so if you're not sure, it's best to ask before you imbibe. But rum, a straight shot of rum is definitely going to be gluten-free. And then we have sake. Now sake is generally, it's derived from like a rice ferment. And so, it's not something that I would recommend because of so many people reacting to rice who are also gluten-free. So, if you like Japanese cuisine and sushi, my advice would be skip the sake, go with the sashimi, skip the, the rice rolled sushi again, and pick a different drink. And then you got schnapps. Schnapps are, there's two kinds of schnapps in today's market. There are the true German schnapps, which are gluten-free. Generally, those are made from different fruits. And then you also have a lot of your American schnapps, which are sweetened oftentimes with grain derivatives. So you've got to really look at, again, your label and make sure that you're not being exposed because of something you didn't suspect was going to be there. So, for example, if you're drinking peach schnapps and they used a corn sugar additive flavoring agent to sweeten it, that's something you're going to want to avoid. And then there's everyone's favorite, tequila. Tequila, if you haven't had a bad night with tequila, I think most people have in their adulthood at some point in their time, but tequila is made from agave, and so 100% gluten-free in that regard. So if you like a good margarita, this is where you can get into trouble. Just like with the daiquiri, it's the flavoring agents that are added to the drink as a mix. So where most people are going to get into trouble, and again, many people aren't just out doing shots. They want a drink they can enjoy, and it doesn't just like light a fire in their throat. And it's the stuff that people add to the drinks that you have to be careful of. But technically, tequila is gluten-free and safe for those of you on a gluten-free diet. Then we have vodka. Now, vodka can be made from different types of plant-based materials. You can make vodka from potato, and vodka from corn and wheat are also very, very common. And so it's important that that you make sure you understand where that vodka is coming from. Now, because distilled spirits, again, things like rum, anytime you're drinking a hard spirit, and when I say a hard spirit, not a fermented beverage, so these things are distilled multiple times. Technically, through the distillation process, they will tell you that that product is gluten-free. And so I think it's important to understand that, okay, if you're talking about the distillation process removing gluten, this is true. But in my experience in dealing with people in my practice, I see it all the time where people try to consume spirits that are derived from grain and pay a huge price. So again, I'm just warning you to be on the lookout and to be cautious about that. And so again, you know, tequila gluten-free, rum gluten-free, vodka gluten-free, or they all can be. Vodka, again, you got to watch out for the grain. Some of them are made from grains directly. And then we have whiskey, which is usually whiskeys derived from wheat. You know, you get some whiskeys also though that are derived from other grains like barley and rye and corn. And so you've got to be very careful with whiskeys and bourbons because in my opinion and in my experience, both personally and with patients, it's one of those that can set a person off if they are reactive to gluten. So I would just be cautious around those. And so there you have it. Those are the main alcohol beverages that you can consume and that you probably are going to, go to a party sometime in the next few weeks. Maybe you got family coming over. Maybe you're doing a Christmas party or a holiday party and you're trying to figure out, maybe you want to have a drink. You're trying to figure out what that should be. Go back through this and make sure you pick something that doesn't sabotage you. The other comment that I will have on alcohol pretty simply is this. Alcohol is typically, unless you buy it specifically this way, it's typically not organic. And one of the things, for example, that we know of in many of the wine productions is that the vast majority of wines grown in the U.S. are contaminated with glyphosate. And what we know about glyphosate is damaging to the GI tract. And so again, if you're going gluten-free and you're trying to recover from years of gluten-induced damage, look for organic. And this is harder to find at a restaurant for sure. Many restaurants don't carry organic spirits or organic alcohols, but I would encourage you to look and I would encourage you to ask. The more people ask, the more that's going to contribute to these different companies possibly carrying organic beverages, because if it's not organic, remember, you can get hammered with glyphosate, which is just a whole different animal. Although that technically doesn't contain gluten, it is a poison and it will and potentially affect your health in a way that you don't want it to. So if you want to avoid the glyphosate, look for organic choices as well. And there are plenty of options for organic tequila, organic vodka, organic rum, and there are options for organic cognac. There are a number of different options. I would say check out your local stores if you're trying to stock up for home use for holiday parties. That way you have something that you can drink that won't damage your health quite so much. Again, remember, alcohol consumption should always be done in moderation, and there are exceptions where people are going to drink. I'm not naive. My head's not in the sand on that. But if you're going to do it, you need to do it to protect your health as much as you possibly can. So I hope you enjoy your spirits this Christmas and New Year season, and I hope you have a fantastic time at whatever party you're deciding to drink at, but don't forget these notes. Now, the other question many of you might have, am I a cheap drunk? Are you a cheap drunk? How do you avoid that hangover, that holiday hangover? Because this is one of the fears that many people have as they go to drink, is they don't want to wake up with the headache or the dehydration or the major hangovers. Because again, alcohol, what is it? It's a diuretic, and it suppresses your immune system, and it definitely has side effects. So how can you avoid that hangover? There are a few things that you can do, that you should do, that might help you navigate the day after the party. So let's talk about those. We'll put a list up on the screen for you. But number one is vitamin C. Vitamin C is a potent agent that really helps your liver to detoxify alcohol. But vitamin C also has a power to reduce inflammation in the GI tract itself. And remember what I said is that alcohol has been shown It was an interesting case study where alcohol was shown in this particular case to actually cause villus atrophy in this individual. And so we know vitamin C helps to recover the inflammation from gluten, and it helps to recover the intestines quicker. So vitamin C is one of those things that definitely would encourage you to take a little extra of the night before you decide to drink, or the night of the party itself. So anywhere from 1 to 5 grams of vitamin C over the course of that day would be an adequate quantity to help support your body's detoxification. Number 2, B vitamins. Specifically, B vitamins in higher doses, like B6 is very, very important for the detoxification of alcohol into acetaldehyde. And so there are certain enzymes that your liver uses that it will need these B vitamins in order to properly work. And so taking these B vitamins before you drink, not after. Before is important. So good B complex would be on the list, or if you have a really high quality multivitamin with a B complex in it, also would be on the list of top priority supplements to avoid that next day hangover. Number 3, binding agents. Binding agents like charcoal and zeolite help to bind some of the toxic byproducts that alcohol produces in the GI tract so that you can get them out of your body. And so you might consider those as well. We have a product called MycoBinder that works really, really well, so that night of, again, that night of the party, pop a couple of MycoBinder and you're off to the races. And then last but not least, don't forget to hydrate. One of the major effects of alcohol is dehydration. So if you're not getting enough water through the course of your drinking, you can wake up with a nasty headache the next day as a result of that dehydration. So make sure you drink plenty of water before you go, and make sure you drink plenty of water when you get home. And do these 4 things, and you'll preserve your body's health and integrity, and hopefully avoid a nasty hangover the following day. So many of you asked me what my favorite beverages are, and so as you can see by my shirt, I'm thankful that rum and tequila are both gluten-free. Pure, organic are my choices. If I'm going to go to some type of alcoholic beverage, beyond cognac. So beyond that, look, don't forget to visit our sponsor, glutenfreesociety.org. And make sure, if you're not already subscribed, to hit that email newsletter so that we can send you tons of great free information on gluten, gluten-free recipes, and the gluten-free lifestyle. I hope your Christmas and your New Year are fantastic. We'll see you in the next segment. All right, today we're going to be reviewing That's It, right? That's It is the name of the product. It's 1 apple plus 10 cherries. This is a fruit bar product. So, many of you, with travel, and I've had this question come up a number of times. What can I do, if I'm a type 1 diabetic, if I need to get my sugar up without actually eating just a ton of processed sugar? And so here we are, we're reviewing this particular bar. Let's give it a go. Okay, here we go. As promised. This one again, it's 1 apple, 10 cherries. Tastes like an apple with cherries, very much so. I mean, one of my favorites is apple butter with cherry in it. There's a company that makes a good apple cherry butter. And this kind of reminds me of that, but very, very solid as far as its taste is concerned. The only ingredients in this product are apples and cherries. That's it. So there's no additives, there's no added sugars, there's none of the concentrated stuff that's added to this, and also no preservatives. So those are all good things. I would say this product would be better if it had organic apples and organic cherries, but it is labeled non-GMO, so that's going to save us from any kind of genetically modified pesticide. But would be better if it did absolutely have organic ingredients, organic apples and cherries instead. Now, if we look at and evaluate this from a nutrition facts perspective, there's 100 calories in this bar. So 100 calories, and there's 0 fat. there's 0 protein, and so this thing is really, it's all, well, there's 1 gram of protein, sorry, let me back that up. 1 gram of protein, and then 26 grams of carbohydrates, 3 of that 26 being dietary fiber, the rest being, you know, the fruit sugar itself, just the natural fruit sugar, so 22 grams. So if you're trying to keep your carbohydrates under better control, this might not be the diet or the bar for you to carry around, but, you know, where I could see this maybe going well would be if you had like some beef jerky and you mix the two together, and you this way you'd get a little diversity amongst your macronutrients. But this is not something that I would personally eat by itself because of the high sugar content, unless you want that sugar hit. And it's not something that I would make a staple. I might, again, this is, to me, it would look like it'd be great travel food, but because of the high carbohydrate level, unless you balance that out with some protein, you can run into trouble, because these things, I could see where this could go down real easy, especially for kids, if you're looking for snack ideas for kids. And I could see where if these were in the house, the little hands would be reaching in that box, and before you know it, that box would be empty in a day, and your kid would be all sugared up. And even though it's apples and cherries, which is infinitely better than processed sugars, kids can still overdo the carbohydrates as well. But overall, this gets a green check for simplistic ingredients. It gets a green check for being gluten-free. And, you know, loses a few points for not being organic, and loses a few points for not having more, you know, balance in terms of macronutrients, carbs, fats, and proteins. This is predominantly carbohydrate, but overall a good tasting bar. Katie has 2 questions. She wants to know, does gluten cause anemia, and can it cause bone loss? So let's back up. Gluten, yes, it absolutely can cause anemia. One of the biggest forms of anemia we see is vitamin B12 deficiency, which can cause a specific type of anemia called macrocytic anemia, which leads to shortness of breath, fatigue, brain fog, muscle aches and pains, and just extreme fatigue. We also see iron deficiency anemia develop in a lot of people with gluten sensitivity, because gluten disrupts the absorption of iron. And of course, iron is necessary to form the protein inside of your cells called hemoglobin, which is what carries oxygen to all the tissues of your body so that you can create energy. So 2 kinds of anemia, predominantly B12 and iron deficiency. Now on to part 2 of the question, can gluten cause bone loss? It absolutely can. Some research shows that the malnourishment and the malabsorption caused by gluten damage to the intestines leads to a bone loss caused, again, by nutritional deficits. So things like calcium and zinc and magnesium deficiency, copper, selenium, all these are minerals required for bone health and bone mineralization. When you have malabsorption from gut damage, you can develop bone loss in that way. Now, there's some new research that shows that osteoporosis is also an autoimmune reaction, and we believe that gluten is responsible in part for stimulating this autoimmune reaction against the proteins of bone themselves. So, malnutrition and autoimmunity are both mechanisms by which gluten can induce bone loss. Thanks for asking your question, Katie. Tina writes in saying, where do I start? I'm already gluten-free and have been that way for 8 years. My gut never feels good, and I'm at a complete loss. So the first thing I would say, Tina, if you're on a gluten-free diet, you have to ask yourself, are you on a healthy gluten-free diet? I'm going to provide a resource below for you. I want you to register. It's free for my Masterclass on how to go gluten-free the right way. So many people do it and they continue to eat certain foods that mimic gluten. Certain processed additives can mimic gluten. Some medications that people are taking can damage their GI tract and keep them from recovering. And this class covers it all in very great detail. Again, I'm going to put that link just below this video so that you can get free access to the Glutenology Masterclass. Thanks for writing in. Carrie wants to know, why do I still get stomach issues even though I'm gluten-free? Couple of things that you can try, Carrie. Number one, you may have more than just a gluten reaction. It's very common for those with gluten sensitivity also to be reactive to other foods. So you might consider getting with your doctor or a good functional medicine provider and asking them to test you for food reactivity. And it's very important. We're not talking about food allergy as much as we're talking about food sensitivity. They're very different things. And food sensitivities, again, very, very common after getting off of gluten. The other thing that you might consider is what else you're eating. One of the other reasons people have persistent GI problems on a gluten-free diet is that they're picking all of the wrong foods, the processed gluten-free products that contain corn and rice and xanthan gum and other fillers. Those things can mimic and behave like gluten, creating gastrointestinal issues. And so you might check your diet and make sure you're not getting those things. Now I'm going to put below this video a link to my Masterclass where I go into depth about all of these things, and it's free for you to watch. You just have to register. Again, it's called the Glutenology Masterclass, and I think if you check that out, you might find a more in-depth answer for why your GI issues are persisting even though you're gluten-free. Mila writes in with this question. Is it true that for someone who is not gluten sensitive that going on a gluten-free diet will actually cause them to become gluten sensitive later? Answer, no. Gluten sensitivity, you either have it or you don't, right? And it's very much a genetic issue. If you have the genes that predispose you to react to gluten and you consume gluten, your body will produce an inflammatory response against that gluten. So stopping gluten and then reintroducing it won't make you more sensitive. Again, you either have the genes or you don't. If you want to learn more about the genetics of gluten sensitivity, I'm going to put a link below this video that you can check out and learn all about gluten and genetics and gluten reactions. Thanks for asking your question. Sandy writes in, she wants to know, why does gluten cause severe migraines and just general malaise when I eat it? Very simply put, gluten is a neurotoxin. There have been a number of research studies connecting gluten as a trigger to migraine headaches. So if you've got migraines and you don't know why, going gluten-free might just be a smart move for you to make. Now I'm going to put a comprehensive article below on migraines and migraine triggers, including gluten, for you so that you can learn a little bit more about that and that connection between gluten and headaches. Thanks for sending your question in. So Mika writes in and asks, what's the best supplement to take if I'm having gluten withdrawal symptoms? This is a great question. Many people going off of gluten can have almost like a withdrawal, like a drug addiction, like withdrawal reaction that can include headaches, low-grade fever, chills, shakes, irritability, mood swings, muscle cramps, muscle spasms, common symptoms of gluten withdrawal. Now, if you're struggling in that regard, some things that you can do to help support your body to offset that, two of my favorite. Number one is vitamin C at higher doses. Vitamin C is actually used in a lot of addiction clinics. A lot of doctors will use high doses of vitamin C to help their patients overcome withdrawal symptoms. So I like a good 5 grams of vitamin C for an adult. Now, another nutrient that might be very helpful is vitamin B3, also used in many addiction clinics to help with withdrawal symptoms. So vitamin C and vitamin B3, also referred to sometimes as niacin, might be extremely helpful. Now, one other thing that you might consider taking as well is just a really solid multivitamin. Many people going gluten-free are severely malnourished, and so getting off that gluten, along with those side effects and along with the gluten-induced malnutrition, just adding that multivitamin in can really help support the body's ability to heal and recover. So a good quality multi, a good quality high-dose vitamin C, and a very good quality vitamin B3. Those three would be the things I would say. Start with that. Won't hurt you, but it might very well help support you on your way. I'm going to put some links to some of our favorite gluten-free supplements below for you, and you can go check those out. Mara writes in with a pretty lengthy question. She says, I have celiac disease and have been totally gluten-free and soy-free for 12 years. I get horrible peripheral neuropathy pain all over my arms and legs fairly consistently, and doctors don't know why or what to do for me other than medicate me with gabapentin, which I refuse. Is my peripheral neuropathy related to celiac disease? Well, it's hard to say, Mara. There's a lot of things that go into the development of peripheral neuropathy. Certainly celiac disease and the malnutrition that comes with it can cause neuropathy. That's very well studied. I've seen that clinically a number of times. Now, that being said, you should ask your doctors, if they haven't, to check you for nutritional deficiencies, because peripheral neuropathy is oftentimes a manifestation of B vitamin deficiency, particularly B12, B5, B1, and folate. So those 4 B vitamins are notorious for contributing to the neurological symptoms associated with celiac disease. It's because celiac causes malnutrition. So, even though you've been gluten-free for years, you may have dug such a nutritional hole for yourself that your nerves need extra B vitamins in order to heal and repair. So ask your doctors to measure those nutrients, and it's important to make sure that you ask them to measure intracellular, not serum levels, but intracellular levels. Serum levels give you false normals oftentimes. So you get the test and it shows everything looks good, but in actuality, inside of your cells, you don't have enough of those B vitamins. So ask for intracellular levels. The other thing that you might want to consider, there's 2 other very big things that I have seen cause persistent peripheral neuropathy in people after going off of gluten. Number 1 is other food reactions. If you haven't asked your doctors to measure those other food reactions, you could have some other food reactions that are contributing to nerve damage, so get those checked out. Number 2, mold toxicity. I see this all the time in people who are in environmental mold. Their house has water damage or there's some type of mold internally, and so they are developing nerve damage as a result of exposure from mold toxins. And so, again, you can ask your doctor to measure you for mycotoxin levels. So you've got 3 pieces of homework there. B vitamins, ask your doctor to measure the intracellular. Other food reactions, ask to measure for food sensitivity. And then mold, ask your doctor to measure for mycotoxins. And those 3 things just might give you the answer that you've been missing for these last 12 years. Renata writes in and asks, why does digestion slow down during menopause, and what can I do about it? So Renata, one of the things that's recently been discovered is that estrogen is very important for GI tract function. And so going through menopause, a lot of women's estrogen levels will drop. I don't know if you've had your estrogen levels measured. Might be a good idea that you visit your OB-GYN or other doctor and have those measured and see just how low they actually are. There are certain medicines that you can take, like bioavailable or bioidentical estrogen drugs, which would have to be prescribed by your doctor. But some people opt for some natural things that can interfere, I shouldn't say interfere, I should say interact with your estrogen receptors. And so these are often referred to as adaptogens. And some of the best estrogen adaptogens are things like Vitex, Agnus Castus, and black cohosh. As a matter of fact, we have a formula called Women's Balance, and that formula is used in some of these situations to support digestion. Now, you might also consider that menopause has nothing to do with it, and that age and the advanced age is actually playing a role here. One of the things that happens in the GI tract as we age is there can be a slowdown of digestive enzyme and digestive acid secretion. And so you might have a problem with the quantity of enzymes and acid that you're producing to help digest your food. This can also slow down motility. So you might try supplementing with a digestive enzyme. You might try supplementing with something like a digestive acid like betaine hydrochloride. Some people also take a couple of teaspoons of apple cider vinegar before a meal and see if that helps to improve their digestion and motility. So check those things out. Come back and let us know how they worked out for you. Thanks for tuning in to the Dr. Osborne Zone. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe for more content like this. And make sure you come back next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time and Thursday at noon 30 for more episodes.